the Mishnah in Shabbos, Shabbos Daf Ayin Gimel Omid Aleph, the Mishnah over there enumerates the Lamed Tes of his Malachas, that one is chayiv for violating them on Shabbos. And one of the Malachas is HaKoisev Shtei Oisiyos. Ksiva is one of the Lamed Tes Malachas, and the Mishnah says that in order to be chayiv for Ksiva, one has to write 2 letters. If one writes less than 2 letters, he's not chayiv achatos b'shoigeg. He won't be chayiv koreis b'mezid. However, the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Shin Mem Sif Cotton Yud Beis brings, in general, that even though one is not chayiv for writing less than 2 oisiyos, but for deswegen it's still asa, and not only is it asa, it's asa min ha-Torah. That's the Mishnah Berurah, and the Bialach over there is marich that even though he writes or does any malach on Shabbos, he does less than the shir that's necessary in order to be chayiv, but it's still asa. That's a Mefush Gemara in Shabbos that it's asa, but the Mishnah Berurah brings that it's asa min ha-Torah because of the rule, since we paskin chatishir asa min ha-Torah. When Yuma Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Beis and Ayin Daled Amud Aleph brings the machlokes of Yochanan and Reish Lakish, and halacha we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan that chatzi shia is asa min ha-Torah. That means if a person eats, the more we're there is talking about isuri achila. If a person eats chaylev, we know if a person eats chaylev, he's chayiv koreis. If it's b'mezid, if it's b'shoigig, he's chayiv a korban. But in order to be chayiv, he has to eat a gezayis. Like all these isuri achila, like most isuri achila, has to be, he has to eat a shir of a gezayis. But from that way, Rabbi Yochanan holds if a person eats less than a gezayis, he still was over in Issa Torah, and he learned it out of a pasuk. It says kol chaylev, lo sachelu. That the word kol comes to be mabed. Even a chati shir is awesome in our Torah. There's no einish, there's no koreis, no korban unless one eats a full gezayis. But there's still an issa deraisa for eating a chati shir. And the Mishnah Berurah brings that this din of Chachi also in our Torah is not only by Yisuri Achila, it applies to Melech Shabbos as well. It applies to Melech Shabbos as well, and he brings this from Mefush Rashi in Shabbos Daf Ayin Daled Amud Aleph. That's where the Gemara says it's also to be mavashal less than a shir, even though one is only chayiv for bishul on Shabbos if he cooks a gregoris. But the Gemara says avada to cook less than a gregoris is still asa. The Gemara doesn't say whether it's asa min ha-Torah only midrabanan, but Rashi over there speaks out that it's asa min ha-Torah. Hayois we paskin that chatishi is asa min ha-Torah. And as we stated in many other Rishonim, the Goyis Hashri, the Zerua, the Chedushei Amiri, Ben Yeruchim, they all say that a chati shia by Melech Shabbos is awesome in our Torah. So the Bialacha says this applies to all malachas, including ksiva. He said befurish that if a person writes one ois, even though he's not chayiv for it, it says befurish in the Mishnah you have to write 2 oisias. But from that way again, if a person writes 1 ois, it's awesome in our Torah because of the general issa of chati shia awesome in our Torah. So this has to be understood, because the pasuk of Chatzshi Asim in the Torah is written by Macholos Asurais, by the Issa of Achilas Chaylev. So Mechitesi to apply this to Melech Shabbos. Maybe only by Surah Achila the Torah says that even a Mashu is also a Chiyuv, Koreis, Chiyuv Malchus, Chiyuv Korban. For that you need a Gzayis. But Mechitesi to say that the same rule applies to Yitzurei Shabbos. The pasuk is not written by Shabbos. Maybe by Shabbos you need a full shir. Otherwise, it's not also altogether min ha-Torah. And in Emerson, there are some Rishonim that say beferish. The Bialacha doesn't bring this, but there are some Rishonim that say beferish that Chatishi on Shabbos is only also min Rabbanan. For example, the Ramban, the Chedushei Ramban in Shabbos Tzadik Dalet Amud Beis, over there he talks about the Surah Malachi carrying. We know that carrying on Shabbos is one of the Lamites Malachas, but Minat Torah, it's only us to carry in Rishus Rabim. To carry in a Kamelis is a mokum that has no mechitzas, so it's not a Rishus Yachid, but Midachis, it's not a mokum that's made for the Rabbim to walk, to go, like an open field, for example. It's a very controversial subject, what's called Kamelis, what's called Rishus Rabim, but Akapanim, a Kamelis, it's also to carry in a Kamelis midrabanan. Midrabanan is also to carry in a Kamelis. It's also to carry from Rishus Yachid into a Kamelis. It's all midrabanan. So the Ramban over there discusses what about those things. There's certain ways of carrying that even in a Rishus Rabim only also midrabanan. Are those is that type of carrying which is only also midrabanan even in the Rishus Rabim? Maybe in a Kamelis, Chazal did not altogether. It's like a Xera maybe. So Ramban says no. Any type of carrying that's also in a Rishus Rabim, whether it's also in Haftarah, whether it's also in Rabbanan, Chazal would not mechalik, and they answered it in the Kamelis just the same. And the Ramban brings the raya. His raya is from carrying a chatzi shir. The person carries a chatzi shir. Nowhere do we find that it's mutter to carry a chatzi shir in a Kamelis. Now, carrying a chatzi shir is only Yasam Rabbanan, and still it's also in a Kamelis as well. It's a raya that any type of carrying that's also B'Shus Rabim, whether it's a carrying that's the Raisa, whether it's a carrying that's the Rabbanan, and that would not machalik, and they asked it in the Kamelis as well. But the Lamaisa state in the Ramban, the Feirish, that to carry a chatzi shir even in the Rishus Rabim is only in Isser Rabbanan. So it seems pretty clear that Ramban does not agree to Rashi and all those Rishonim that say chatzi shir is also Minat Torah by Melech Shabbos. It seems from the Ramban that he holds that no, you can't compare Shabbos. You can't compare Shabbos to Isuri Achila. The Gzeirus Akos of chatzi shir was only said by Isuri Achila, but by Melech Shabbos, there is no din of chatzi shir Minat Torah. It's only Nisr Rabbanan. So according to Ramban, Pashas to write one ois on Shabbos, even though it's asa, but it's only asa midrabanan. Not like the Bialacha says. Bialacha is passing like Roy Rishonim who say chatzi shir is asa minat Torah on Shabbos. There's a raya from the Rambam as well. From the Rambam, there's a raya that Sefer Kovis brings a raya that the Rambam also holds that chatzi shir b'melech Shabbos is only asa midrabanan, and the Rosh Hashanah in the Re'im that chatzi shir on Shabbos is only asa midrabanan. But from deswegen. But the Lamaisa, the Bialacha paskins like Roy with the Rishonim that say beferish that chatzi shir is asa minat Torah by Melech Shabbos, and the Bialacha assumes that this would include ksivas ois achas would also be asa minat Torah mitzad the din of chatzi shir asa minat Torah. The problem is that there's a mefusha tosefta in Perek Dalet of Mesachos Beya that says Koisev Ois Achas Eino Ela Shvus. The Sefta brings brings it from B'Shem the Chachamim that if someone writes one Ois on Shabbos is Eino Ela Shvus. Shabbos Yom Tov, that's all the same when it comes to Melachas Ksiva, and it says Mefurish it's only a Shvus. A Shvus generally means it's only Yasam Rabbanan. So l'chayri you see Kla that chatzi shir is only Yasam Rabbanan. As though you freak the Tzos Chaim, that's Rabbi Nachman Zemba. So l'chayri you see from this Tosefta, not like all these Rishonim that say chatzi shir b'melech Shabbos Yasam Torah. Chayri it's schwer from this Tosefta that says mefurish that Koisev Ois Achas is Shvus. That sounds like it's only Yasam Rabbanan. So to this we could say l'chayra. In Emerson, the Toysus Yom Tov asks a kasha. We mentioned before that the Mishnah in Shabbos of Ein Gimel Omar Aleph enumerates all the Lamites Malachas. It goes through all the Lamites Malachas one by one. But by most of the Malachas, it does not say the shear. It doesn't say how much you have to cook. It doesn't say how much you have to bake. It doesn't say you have to bake. Now there is a minimum shia. You have to bake or cook a gregor, shia gregoris. And many malachas have a minimum shia, but the Mishnah doesn't mention any shia. It's only 4 malachas where the Mishnah mentions the shia of how much you have to do in order to be chayiv. Tfira, it says you have to sew 2 stitches. By Ariga, it says the Shia. And Ksiva is one of the four malachas where the Mishnah says how many letters you have to write. So the Tais Yomtiv asks the Shaila, why punk by these four malachas, Ksiva, Ariga, Tfira? Does the Mishnah write the Shia of how many by Ksiva, how many letters one has to write? By most of the malachas, the Mishnah doesn't say what the Shia is, how much you have to cook, how much you have to be bayra in order to be chayiv. Why punk by these four malachas did the Mishnah mention the Shia? They fake the Tais Yomtiv. So the Sefer Mogin Avos, that's a famous Sefer on Lamed Tes Malachas. Sefer Mogin Avos, he says the Yisoid. He says that by those four malachas where the Mishnah specifically tells us how much a person has to do in order to be chayiv, there, Moshe, we'll talk about Ksiva, because that's our topic. So there, the two letters is not a shear. It's not just a shear. There, the pshat is that if you write less than two letters, it's not a malacha. Kimbu Chazal had a Messiah, had a Kabbalah, that by these malachas, including Melchus Ksiva, the two oishas is not just a shear. But the pshat is to write less than two letters, to write only one letter, that's not Melchus Ksiva. Those hazish Melchus Ksiva. The person cooks a half a gregris, he did a malach of bishul. It's just, it's a chati shir, and that's exeris hakosuf, that you're not chayim until you cook a certain amount, a choshev amount. But even less than a gregris is considered melaches bishul, melaches afiyah. It's just not enough to be chayiv. But by ksiva, the person writes one letter, it's not pshat. He violated melaches ksiva. He just won't be chayiv because he didn't do enough. No, by ksiva, less than a shir is b'chlal not a malacha. It's not a malacha. It's not called malacha ksiva. He wrote. Can't deny that he wrote, but it doesn't have a chashivas. It doesn't have a shem of malachas ksiva. It doesn't have a shem of malachas ksiva. So the fee there. What's an afminute? There can be many nafkaminas, but the Yonenu, we can understand very well that even if Chatzi Shir by Melachas Shabbos is awesome in our Torah, but to write one letter, that's not Chatzi Shir, that's Chatzi Melacha. And Chatzi Melacha, Tornev Asit Chatzi Melacha. So we can understand very well why the Tosefta says to write one letter is only a shvus. It's not going to offend for them to be a locha that says foolish writing one letter is an isha deraisa as Chatzi Shir. But it will fend for all the Rishonim that say Chatzi Shir is also in our Torah by Melachas Shabbos. It's not a stira to this Tosefta, because the Tosefta is talking about writing one letter. The Tosefta is might have a person will cook a half a gregris. That'll be also in our Torah. It's worse than a shvus. But writing one letter is not just a Chatzi Shir. Writing one letter is a Chatzi Melacha. It's not a Malacha. It doesn't have a Shem Malacha. Like Ksiva, Kimlu L'Chazal, like the Mogen Avos says, Kimlu L'Chazal, that if a person writes only one letter, that's not called Melachas Ksiva. And Mamela, it's not also Minat Torah, it's Chatzi Shir, it's not Chatzi Shir. You haven't done any Malacha at all. By Bishul, by Boira, if a person is Mavashal half a gregris, he did Melachas Bishul. It's just exeris hakosef that you're not chayiv until you cook a shir gregris. But if he cooks half a gregris, he did Melachas Bishul. So he's not chayiv for it, but it's still awesome in our Torah. But when it comes to ksiva, to write one letter is b'chlal not melechus ksiva. It's writing, but it's not melechus. It's not melechus ksiva. It's not a chati shir. It's a chati melacha. He didn't do melechus ksiva. So b'chiyah gav the Torah never asked chati shir. But this teretz is not so pashut. Not so pashut because. We have to go to a run in Shavuos. This teretz should really be told in a big machlokes we train him about the whole gather of Chatzi Shir. There's a Mishnah in Shavuos that says the following: if a person makes a shvur shaloi oichel, let's say he says, I swear I'm not going to eat today. So if a person violates his shvur, b'mezit, he's chai malchus. He was loyman lo yachal devorei. So now the question is, how much does he have to eat in order to be chai malchus? So the machlokes tanoim, but halacha we paskin, you have to eat exayis. You have to eat exayis because we assume that when a person swears I don't want to eat, he meant a gezayis. Since that's the sheer for achila b'chol ha'torah kula, in order to be chayiv, he has to eat a sheer choshev, which is a gezayis. So we assume that when a person swears I don't want to eat, he meant to asa a gezayis. And Memeli will not be chayiv if he eats less than a gezayis, he will not be chayiv malchus. The question is he allowed lechatchila to eat less than a gezayis? So Ramban's shit is that yes, he's allowed. And he says there's no issa of chat shi'osem in HaTorah, because chat shi'osem in HaTorah is by Yisurim with the Torah made. Chaylev. The Torah said Chaylev is also. And the same Torah said that even a mashu is also. Even a mashu of eating Chaylev is also. The only thing is, in order to be Chayiv, you have to eat a G'zayis. But less than G'zayis is also Minat Torah. Don't stay in the Pasuk, call Chaylev. It's also Minat Torah, but there's no Malchus unless you eat G'zayis. But when by Isurei Shvur, the Torah didn't make this Issa. I made the Issa. The Torah gave me a koyach through a Shvur to create a new Issa Achila. But I'm the one that made the Issa. The Torah didn't answer it. By swearing that I'm not going to eat today, I created an Issa Achila. But my das was only das exayis. I never had my das less than exayis. So how could it be an Issa Chatishir? Isurim that the Torah was machadish. So there the Torah told us that even a mashu is also minat Torah. You're just not chayiv unless you eat exayis. But Isurim that Torah was never machadish. The Torah Isurim that that I was machadish through a shvua, and my das was to asa only exayis. So less than exayis is not also. It's mutter lachatchila. I can lachatchila. There's no reason why not. The Ramban says it's mutter lachatchila to eat less than exayis when it comes to Yisurei Shvua. However, the Rambam, the Rosh, the Ran all disagree with this Ramban, and they say as follows: even though the Gemara says that the Issa Chatishia is learned from a pasuk of Kol Chaylev. Remember, we mentioned before that the shtickle ha'ara and all these Yishayim that say that Chatishia is also by Melech Shabbos as well, make it tasty. The pasuk is written by Macholos Asurais. Pasuk is written by Macholos Asurais to make it tasty to apply to Shabbos. We never answered it, but the Teretz says the Bialacha says the Teretz. He says because that same Gemara in Maseches Yuma that says Chatishia is learned from the pasuk of Kol Chaylev, but the Gemara also says that there's a svara. It's not just a choik. There's a svara why Chatishia is also, and the svara is because it's Chazid and Starufi, famous Gemara, that Chatishia is also if I eat a half a gzayis of Chaylev or eat a half a gzayis on a half a kesevas on Yom Kippur, any machal issa. The reason why it's asa because even though right now I only ate a half a gzayis, but if in 2 minutes later I'll eat another half a gzayis, then it'll be mitzdarif to the chatzi gzayis that I ate 2 minutes earlier, and now I'll be chayiv. I'll be chayiv for the full gzayis. So since it's chazil mitzdarufi, so even before I eat the second half, and even if I never eat the second half, it's still awesome in our Torah. Now, what does this mean? Chazli is terufi. So there's a Pri Megadim that says that Choli Litzarufi is like a Gzeira. It's a Gzeira the Torah made. Sometimes the Torah makes Gzeiras. Most Gzeiras are Midrabanan. But in this case here, Chazal, the Torah made a Gzeira and said, don't eat a half a Gzeis of Chaylev because you may decide to eat another half a Gzeis in 2 minutes later, and then L'Mafreya, you will either it's a chorus. So Chali is Tarufi, the Pri Megadim learns, is a svara, it's a gzeira that Torah made. We find Torah making gzeiras. There's an Issa Yichud in the Torah, which according to most Yishayim is an Issa Deraisa. And it's a gzeira. Torah has a Yichud. He may come to the Guf Aveira of Gilei Arayas. The Raman says, a nausea can't drink wine, can't eat grapes, can't eat the pits, the shells. The Raman says, really, the Ika Issa is the wine that the Torah doesn't want him to drink. But the Torah acid, the grapes and the shells and the pits, it's a gzeira deraisa. The Torah made a gzeira because the Torah was afraid. The Torah wanted him to keep away from grapes altogether, so he shouldn't come to drink the wine, the grape juice, the wine. So here too, the issa of chatishia, that's what the Torah says. Kol chaylev, don't eat even a chatishia of chaylev is also because chali is sarufi, which could mean like people learns it means exera. Not everyone learns like that. We'll see soon. But akapanim, because it's chali and sarufi, that's why it's also. So all these Yishayim hold that chali and sarufi is a new issa. In other words, they hold if I eat a chatzi gzayis of chaylev, I really didn't violate the issa of achilas chaylev. Issa of achilas chaylev is only if I eat a gzayis. Now the Torah said, don't eat a half a gzayis because it's chali trufi. Chali trufi is a siba to be mechalish, a new issa called chatishia. So they taina, if that's the case, that same svara applies to issa shua as well. This is what the Bialacha says. That's why it applies by issa Shabbos, even though the policy is by machol zazuos. But the svara of chali trufi is swore by Melech Shabbos just the same as by Yisur Achila. So why should there be a difference? So this is what these Rishonim are saying. These Rishonim are saying that it's true that the person never had in mind to asa when he makes a shua shloi oichel. He never had in mind to asa less than exais. It's true. And in Achami, he's less than exais. He did not violate issa shua. But that's true when a person eats half exais as well. He did not violate issa chaylev. He did not violate this achelav, and the Torah still asked it because the chazli is trufi. That is a sibas issa. That sibas issa applies to shu as well. It's true that chati zayis is not a violation of layachal. He never meant to ask it. It's not awesome. It's not shua, but it's awesome. It's this new issa of chali tarufi. Ramban obviously does not agree with this. Ramban holds that Choli is Tarufi is not the Sibas Issa. Torah never made new Isurim. When Torah asks Chatishia, it's an Issa Chaylev. It's Issa Chaylev. The Torah tells us that even in Achila of a Mashu of Chaylev is considered is Achilas Chaylev and it's Asa. You're just not Chayv until you eat a full Shia. But the Ik Issa of Achilas Chaylev is even an Chatishia. But by Shua, the Ramban holds doesn't pass. By Shua doesn't pass because Shua, I'm the one that made the Issa, and I never had in mind to ask a lesson exist. I think more says Choli is Tarufi. So the Achronim say, Chanan says this, others say that Ramban learns Choli is Tarufi is just a simim alma. In other words, it's just a raya that, or it's not a siba, it's a raya that if I eat half a gzayis of chaylev, I eat half a gzayis of chaylev. Right now, we have guys of chaylev right now. So, if that's 100% mutter, it's hard to understand that if in 2 minutes later I eat another half gzayis, the mafreya I should be chayiv for the full gzayis. If what I did initially was 100% mutter, how did it become also all of a sudden the mafreya? That's why it's more mistavra that. That's why it's mistavra that. that even a chatishia is also is considered achilas chaylev. I'm just not chayiv for it because I didn't eat enough. Akaponim, the Ramban learns Choli Yitzrufi is not the Sibas Issa. Choli Yitzrufi is just a raya proof or reason that why even a chatishia is also mitam achilas chaylev. But by Issa Shvur, where there I made the Issa, so Ramban holds that if I made the Issa, and I never had in mind to Asa less than a Shia, so it's not Asa, it's Mutter even L'chatchila. So we have a big machlokes here about the side of the Issa of Chatishia of Kol HaTorah Kula. According to Ramban, the Choli Litzarufi is not the Sivas Issa. The side of Chatishia is that when the Torah Aset Chaylev or any Machal Shal Issa, the Torah said even a kolshu is considered achilas chaylev and is asa. There's a kosev that I'm not chayiv in einish, kores, malkis, carbon until I eat a certain amount. But if I eat less, I violated issa. The issa, I'm just not chayiv for it until I eat exayis or whatever the shear is. But it's that issa of achilas chaylev. There's no new isurim over here. That's very good, by the way. The Ramban Shitasai that holds that by Melech Shabbos there's no issa of chatishia, because according to Ramban that the Choli Litzarufi is not the Sibas or issa, but rather that is the issa chaylev. So that you only find that by Macholas Asurais, Mechitesi, to apply that by Shabbos. Maybe by Shabbos it's only asa if you cook a full gregors. Mechitesi to say that even Torah never told us by Shabbos that even a chatishia is considered is awesome mitam Melech Shabbos. But those Rishonim that hold that chatishia doesn't apply to Melech Shabbos, that works out very well. But for the other Rishonim, the Rambam, the Rosh, who all say that Choli Yisrufi, that is the Sibas Issa. It's not also because of Achilas Chaylev. There's the new Issa, because of Choli Yisrufi, which could be Al Gzeira, whatever. But there's a new Issa, new Sibas Issa of Choli Yisrufi, and because of that, it's also, it's nothing new with Issa Chaylev. Eat less than Exayis Chaylev, you have not violated Issa of Achilas Chaylev, according to them. Until you eat Exayis, you have not violated Issa of Achilas Chaylev. There's a new Issa called Chatishia, which the Torah asked because of Choli Yitzarufi. Maybe they hold that applies to Shabbos as well. Wherever you have the svara of Choli Yitzarufi. And that's why they hold that by Issa Shvua, there's also an Issa of Chatishia, even though certainly if he eats less than Exayis, he has not violated the issa of achila because he never had in mind to ask less than exayis. So he did not violate this shvua, but there's a new issa of chadi Yitzarufi. That gufa is the sibas issa. It's not also issa shvua. It's also because of this new issa that the Torah is machadish, that anytime you do something that's chadi Yitzarufi, is the Torah asked it. That's the issa of chatishia. We have a problem. We said before that perhaps the reason why the Tosefta says Sivas Ois Achas is only a Shvus, is only Yosem in Rabbanon, is because it's not a stira to that which the Rishonim say that Chatzi Shia is also by Melech Shabbos. So he said, based on the side of the Magen Office, that by Siva, since Sivas Shtei Ois is mentioned Mefurish in the Mishnah, the pshat is that if you write less than 2 oisias, you write just 1 ois, it's not a chatishia, it's a chatim malach. It's b'chalal not considered malachas ksiva. It's b'chalal not considered malachas ksiva. It's not chatishia. By all other malachas, where the Mishnah doesn't mention the shia there, by bishul, cooking a gregoris, their gregoris is a shia, which means if you cook half a gregoris, you also have done malachas bishul. Just exercise a custom, you have chayiv for it until you cook a choshev amount. You cook a shia gregoris. But cooking a half a gregoris, you have done malachas bishul, and that's why it's also mitzat chatshiyos and Torah. But by ksiva, if you write just 1 ois, you haven't done malachas ksiva. it's not a Chatishia, it's a Chati Malacha, and that's why there's no issa of Chatishiyos in Torah, and that's why it's only Yeshus. That's what we said. But this is not so pashut. Because according to all these Rishonim, the Rambam, the Rosh, the Ran, who say that even by Issa Shvua, there's an Issa of Chatishia. Now by Issa Shvua, it's also Chati Malacha. It's not, to eat less than Gzais is not an Issa Shvua. You never had in mind to answer that. Elamai is also because of this new Issa, that anything that's Choli Litztarufi, the Torah said because it's Choli Litztarufi, there's a new Issa of Chatishia. And that's why even by Shvua, where if he eats a half a Gazayas, and he only had in mind to ask him upon himself a Gazayas, so to eat a half a Gazayas is nothing as far as Issa Shvua is concerned, and still these Rishonim, the Rambam, the Ran, the Rosh, all hold, and that's how, by the way, that's how we pass in Shulchan Aruch and Yeridea. That's awesome in our Torah. If a person says Shvua Shlo Yochel, he's also to eat even Chatzig Zayis mitam Chatziyos in our Torah, because we hold, even though he didn't have in mind, there's no issue Shvua over here because he never had in mind to ask a less than Zayis, but it's still awesome because of Chazil and Sarufi. Because of Chazil and Sarufi. If that's the case, if a person writes one letter, it shouldn't make a difference, even if we'll say writing one letter is not Melechas Ksiva. It's a Chati Melacha, but it's Chazil and Sarufi. It should be no different than eating a Chatzi Gzayis by a Shvua. They're also a Chatzi Melacha. It's no Melacha, it's garnished. As far as the Shvua is concerned, he never had in mind to asa less than Gzayis, so he eats less than Gzayis. There's no violation of Lo Yachel. He's not being Machal Dibura, he never asked it less than Gzayis. And still we say, still these Rishonim, all the Rishonim besides the Ramban, the Rambam, Ran, and Rosh hold that's awesome in our Torah because there's a swar of Chali Sarufi. That's a new Issa. That's the goof of the Sibas Issa. So if that's the case, it's Shvik Shver. Why writing one letter, even if we'll say it's Chatzi Malacha, it still should be awesome in our Torah because it's Chali Sarufi. That's the kasha. So we have to say like this. There is a Shagazayeh. There is a Shagazayeh that says the following. The Shagazayeh, he brings rayas. It's kind of foolish. We know that on Pesach there's an Issa Bal Yiro Bal Yimatzah. On Pesach, not only is it also to eat chametz, and the benefit from chametz, one cannot own chametz. One cannot cannot have chametz in its possession that belongs to him. And one is only over, one is only chayiv if he has the gzais of chametz. What about if he has half a gzais? He won't be over. He won't be chay malchus. While you're by matzah, you chay malchus. If you do it through a ma'aser, there's ways of being chay malchus. So what about a chatishir? Is there a din of chatishir in the Torah? So there's rayas that by Baliro, by Motzah, there's no Issa of Chatshi Asam in the Torah. A person has in his possession less than Exais, he's not over the Issa Baliro by Motzah. There's no Issa Deraisa. There's no Issa Deraisa to have less than Exais of Chametz in one's possession during Pesach. The question is why not? Why is there no Issa of Chatishir? So Dr. Shagazayeh, a beautiful svara, that the svara of Chazil Litztarufi does not apply to Bayiro Bayimotze. Why? Because Alamo, the svara of Chazil Litztarufi is a person, I eat now a chatzi gzais of chaylev, and if in 2 minutes later, as long as it's Taich K'dei Shiach Hilos fast, I'll eat another chatzi gzais of chaylev. Now Lemafreya, the first achilas chatishia will be mitztarev with the second achilas chatishia, and for that, and it'll be mitztarev to shia gzais, and I'll be chayiv korban kores for that achila. So that original chatishia is chazi to be mitztarev if I'll eat another chatishia. Like Bal Yiro Bal Yimatzah, if I have in my possession right now half a gzais of chametz on Pesach, Now it's true. If I'll bring into my house another half of gazayas, then I'll have a full gazayas. But it's not the pshat that the first re'iyah, the first ownership of a chatzi gizayis of chametz will be mitzvah with the second chatzi shir. If let's say I have in my possession a half a gizayis of chametz, and then I get rid of it, I burn it up. Cholamite, I burn it up, and then I bring another half a gizayis. I will not be chayiv, because in order to be chayiv by Yiro, I have to have a full gizayis at once. It's not mitzvah to the re'iyah, to the fact that I had chametz 2 minutes ago. So if I have in my possession half a gizayis of chametz, it's true that if I bring another half a gizayis, and now I have a full gizayis, so now I'll be yoy by matzah. But it's not going to be mitzvah to the fact that 2 minutes earlier I had half a gizayis. That's not mitzvah. That chatzi gizayis that was found in my rishus 2 minutes ago, that's not royal starif. If I'll keep it, if it will remain in my rishus, when I bring another half, so now I will have a full gizayis, and I'll be chayiv for having now a full gizayis. But it's not mitzdarif to what I had 2 minutes ago. Kumta is that if I have in my possession half a gizayis of chametz, this ownership that I own right now is not Chodis Sufi. Not Chodis Sufi. Yes, if I bring another half of Gazayas, I'll be chayav because later I'll have a full Gazayas. But when we asa eating a Chatzi Gazayas of Chaylev, because Chodis Sufi, there the pshat is, because if I eat half of Gazayas of Chaylev, even though right now I'm not chayav, but if 2 minutes later I eat another half of Gazayas, that'll be mitzdarif with the earlier achila. The earlier achila will be mitzdarif to a shir shalom and I'll be chayiv. That's not the case by Bayirah. The earlier of Bayirah, where I only had half a gizayis, is not called the Yitzarufi. It's only if I bring another chatishia and now I have a full shir in my home, I'll now be chayiv for owning, for having in my possession a full gizayis. That's not called Yitzarufi. Now, even though if you learn like the Pri Megadim that the side of Chazi Tzerufi is a Gezeira, really should make no difference whether I'll be Chayv Mafreya or Mikan Labab. That shouldn't make any difference. The Gezeira it's still the same Gezeira. So the Shagai doesn't seem to learn that Chazi Tzerufi is because of the Gezeira. Whatever the Svar is, as far as anything that's Chazi Tzerufi, acid. Now it's Gzeira. A new Siba of Chali Sarufi. Whatever the Svar is, but Akapanim, it's not Gzeira to get in. And Mamela, he says that by Bayirah, that's only considered Chali Sarufi where the present Achilas Chatzi Shia is Chali Sarufi. Or by Shabbos also. If I cook half a Gregorus, and then later on, I cook another half of Gregorus, it'll be mitzvah with the earlier cooking. They have a svara of Chadis Sarufi, because that half a Gregorus that I'm cooking right now is Chadis to be mitzvah. If in 10 minutes later, whatever, I'll cook another half of Gregorus, then Lamafreya, I'll be chayiv for the combination of the earlier Chatishia and the present Chatishia. That's Chadis Tufi. But by Yiro, it's not, when I bring in another half of Gzais, it's not being mitzvah to the earlier Chatzi Shia that I have in my possession. I'm chayiv because right now I have in my possession a full Gzais. That's not called Chadis Tufi. That's what the Shagai says. So I want to be moisiv. One further nekuda. And that's as follows. Again, we have a kasha. The Tosefta says that if a person cooks, if a person writes one ois, it's only a drabanan. So we have a kasha. Why should it only be a drabanan? We have the chatzishiyah. And so we said initially, it's not a chatzishiyah, it's chatzi malacha. Because by ksiva, one letter is b'chal, not malachas ksiva. Then we said, but it's fair. It's fair because if the svara of Chachi is because Chali is Tzerufi, and Chali is Tzerufi, that is the Siba Se'isa. So whether you call writing one letter Chatishia, or you call it Chatzi Malacha, but it's Chali is Tzerufi. And here it's really an emes of Chali is Tzerufi, because I write one letter now. If in 10 minutes later I'll write a second letter, it'll be mitzdarif to the earlier ksiva. I'm not doing a new ksiva of 2 letters. I wrote one letter now, and if in 10 minutes later I'll write a second letter, I'll be chayiv now for the tziruf of the earlier ksiva and the present ksiva. That's a real chali tzirufi. So even if you're talking, so it shouldn't make a difference whether it's chati malacha, chati shia, but we have this swar of chali tzirufi. That was the kasha. And that members, there's a similar kasha. There's a Mishnah right in the beginning of Masechet Shabbos that says, if let's say a malach is done through 2 people, Mishnah talking about carrying Mishus Yoch, the Shuzam, Shuzam, Yoch. So we know in order to be chayv for carrying, you have to be oike the chayfes in a Shuz Yoch, take it out to Shuzam and put it down, or vice versa. You need an akira, you need a oitzah and hanoch. Let's say the malach is done through 2 people. Let's say I pick it up in a Shuz Yoch, and I pick up an object in a Shus Yochid, and I stretch my hand out with the object, and I stop, and someone else comes and takes it out of my hand, puts it down. So we both together did a Ma'aseh Itzah, but since it wasn't done through one person, Ze'oik is a miniach, you're not chayiv, potter. But it's also, each one was over issa, but they're not chayiv. In order to be chayiv, you need one person doing the entire malacha. Now, all the Rishonim, including Rashi and many Rishonim, all say that the issa that they violated is an issa drabanan. Since neither one of them did the full malacha, it was done through 2 people. One did the akira, the other one did the hanacha. So they both also midrabanan. So members. Even Rishonim ask a shayla, why should it be mirabanan? Bishlam is the one that puts it down. He didn't do a ma'aseh that chali tzirufi, but the one that picked it up and stretched his hand out, he could go weiter. And if he goes weiter and puts it down, the mafreya, he was over this deraisa. So why shouldn't that be asim in Torah? Now some say, because it's chati malacha, not chati shia. But they say, but it's still shver. Hey, yois, the issa of chati shia is also because it's chali is terufi. There's also chali is terufi. I pick it up and I stretch my hand out. If I keep it in my hand for 2 minutes and then I decide to drop it and put it down, l'mafreya, I'll be chayiv. So it's chali is terufi. So why shouldn't it be, even though it's chati malacha, why should that make a difference? If the issa of chati shia is because it's chali is terufi, that is the sibas issa. So why shouldn't it be also in Torah? So we have these 2 kashas. One kash we have ksiva. Ksiva is ois achas. Why is ksiva ois achas only yosim in Rabbanan according to the Tosefta? And even if we'll say that it's chatzi melacha, because by ksiva, one ois is b'chalal not a melachas ksiva. Not just a chashon and shia, it's b'chalal not a melachas ksiva. So it's chatzi melacha, but it's shver. It's still shver. If chali yituvi is the sibas issa, we still have that sibas issa. Should not be any different than eating half of his eyes by sure. There's also chati malacha. There's no violation at all of issa shua, and still it's also because chati is tarufi. So why should writing one letter be any different? And we have this shaila by ze'oike ze'meniach. Why shouldn't it be also in our Torah al tzchat shir? Because the oike did a ma'aseh at chati is tarufi. I just want to say you say like this. It's a tesefus to what the Shagadai said. That's as follows. Let's first talk about Ze'oikev Zemeniach. There we see it clear. By Ze'oikev Zemeniach, so when I pick up the object, I stretch my hand out into Shusam. So right now, the ma'aseh that I did is b'chalal not a ma'aseh hoitzah. I didn't put it down. Until I put it down, hoitzah wasn't done. It's a ma'aseh of tilt to Yama. It's a ma'aseh akira, but it's not a ma'aseh hoitzah. If I will be goyim and put it down, then the mafreya, it'll become part of a Maisaitza. It'll get a new Shem, it'll get a new identity. That's not called Chodis Terufi. Chodis Terufi is like, if I eat a half a gazayis of chaylev, I ate chaylev. Half a gazayis is also called eating chaylev. And if 2 minutes later I eat another half a gazayis, I'm not changing the identity of my original Maisa. It's still achila. I just ate more, but it's the same. The Shema Maisa is the same. So kumtois, if I eat a half a gazayis of chaylev, this very Maisa is Chodis Terufi. Because if I eat another half a gazayis, then I'll be chayiv for eating a full gazayis. It's not changing its identity by eating another half a gazayis. It's just eating more. So then we say Chodis Terufi. But most of my oike, if I do an akira and I don't do the anocha, right now I did not do it at all. The Shem of the Maisa that I did now is not Chodis Terufi. It's true if I put it down, I'll be Chayav Mafreya, because you know why? Because when I put it down, it'll get now the Mafreya, a new identity, a new Shem. It'll now become a Hotzah. That's not Chodis Terufi. Chodis Terufi is only when this Shem, this Maisa that I did a Maisa that this Shema Maisa is Chodis to be mitzvah and to be Chayav for it. Like by Achila or by Shvua. I ate, I asked myself to eat. So I meant only exercise. But if I eat less exercise, I ate. It's just not awesome. I have to eat more because I only asked it to eat exercise, but I ate. So that's Chodis Terufi. I'm not changing the identity of my pula by eating more. I'm just eating more. And I only asked it if I eat a full exercise. But if I do an akira, and I don't finish it off. So right now, I did not do a Maisoitza. Right now, the Shem of what I did, the identity of what I did is, I did an Akira. I moved an object, but I didn't do any Hoitza. Now, it's true, if I'll finish it, I'll be Chayiv, L'mafreya. But if I'll be Chayiv L'mafreya, because when I finish it, I'm going to be changing L'mafreya, the identity, the Shem of what I did before. It'll become a Maisoitza. So kumtais, what I did now, not Chodis Terufi. I'll be chayiv if I finish it, because if I finish it, I'll be changing, I'll be giving the original Akira a whole new Shem, a whole new identity. That's not Chodis Terufi. Chodis Terufi is only when I do something, and what I do right now, the Shem of what I did now is Chodis to be mitzvah and be chayiv for it, like by Achila. Now, so let's go back to Meleches Shabbos. By Meleches Shabbos, so yeah, by cooking, for example, if I cook a half a gregris, so I'm going with the Magen Avis that by all malachis, the shear is a shear. But if I cook a half a gregris, I did meleches bishul. I just didn't do enough to be chayiv. So that's Chodis Terufi. Because right now I cooked half a gregris, so I did a peula of meleches Shabbos, of meleches bishul. I'm not chayiv because it's Jersey Kosov, you have to cook a gregris. So now if I will later on cook another half a gregris, I'm not changing the identity of my pula mafreya. It always had a Shem of meleches bishul. I didn't do enough. I didn't cook enough to be chayiv. So there, Chodis Terufi. If I'll cook another half a gregris, now I'll be chayiv mafreya for that very Shem ha'maisa of cooking. What have I cooked? I just didn't cook enough to be chayiv, but I'm not changing. In order to be chayiv, I don't have to change the identity of my ma'aser. That's Chodis Terufi. But by ksiva, since we say by ksiva, if I write one letter, it's not just a chatishir. It b'chlal doesn't have a shem meleches ksiva. So it's true. If I'll write a second letter, I'll be chayiv, l'mafreya. But I'll be chayiv because I write a second letter. I'm going to be changing the whole identity of that first letter. Once I write a second letter, it'll be mitzvah with the first letter, and now we'll get a new identity of a meleches ksiva. That's not Chodis Terufi. Chodis Terufi is only where the very ma'aser that I did now, the Shema ma'aser that I did now, is Chodis to be chayiv if I'm mitzvah of it with another chatishir. And that's true by all Meleches Shabbos, except for those four, where the Mishnah tells us this year, like Siva, where the Mishnah tells us you have to write two letters. So there the Magen Avis says to write one letter is b'chlal not meleches ksiva. So there it doesn't pass chatishir also min haTorah. because it's not called Chalitz Sarufi. Because the Shem of what I did now is not Chalitz. Right now I did a Maisik Ksiva, but I didn't do a Malacha. Ksiva B'alma will never become Masa. If I write a second letter, the reason why I'm afraid I'll be Chayiv for the first one, the tzir of the second one is because if I write a second one, I'm afraid to change the identity of that first letter. It'll now become part of a Melechas Ksiva, which till now it wasn't. So that's why it's not called Chalitz Sarufi. With this, we can understand. There's a lot in Shulchan Yeridea. We know there's an issa of karcha. One is not allowed to pull out hairs if a relative was nifta, and it was customary by non-Jews, they would pull out hairs to show their mourning, their grief. So the Torah says we're not allowed to do that. There's an issa of karcha alameis. Now the Gemara says the halach is that you have to pull out two hairs. You have to pull out two hairs in order to be chayiv. Pull out one hair, you're not chayiv. So in Shulchan Yeridei, it's in Kuf Pei Sif Tes. It says it brings different shittas of how much you have to pull out in order to be chayiv. So different shittas. One of the shittas is you need two hairs. Other shittas it's got to be more. It got to be gris. Different opinions how much you have to pull out in order to be chayiv. Then the mechaber ends off with yesh mi she'omer the surah ikka afil b'seyachas. There's some who hold that even one hair, even though it's not chayiv, but it's still us. And the going says why? Al chatz yosem in a Torah. But it seems that the first shitta holds no. There's no issue at all to do one hair. Yesh mi she'omer. The general rule is when the mechaber says yesh mi she'omer, he doesn't mean to pass like that. And so the Gilui Mash over there says, what's shot in the first shitta? Why the first shitta hold that there's no issa of Chati Shir? So he says because first shitta goes like the Re'im. The Re'im is one of those that hold that there's no issa Chati Shir outside of Yisur Echila. This Chati Shir is only by Yisur Echila. We're there. The Xeris HaKos, the Torah says beferish that even a Mashu is asa. So. But by other Yisurim, there's no Isachat Shir. So it's only Yesh Mi Shaima. But the other shittas hold, there's no Isachat Shir. No Isachat Shir. Chat Shir is only also by Yisur Achila. But it's very share because in Yeridea, Hilchos Shavuos, there Mechaber said Paskins that if a person swears not to eat, he passes like most Rishonim that there is an Isachat Shir because Chazal is Terufi. Now that's not Isachila. That's not I made this, and still it's also like you're trying to explain because Chazal is Tufi. So the Chayra, why shouldn't that swear Chazal is Tufi pass over here also? Granted, it's not a Sachila, but why should it should be us as a swear Chazal is Tufi? It should be no different than Shua, but Shua also not a Sachila. It's an Sachila because I made it, but I only made it for full Gezayis. Kati Gezayis is only also because Chazal is Tarufi. So why that's far as we shine there also. I pull out one hair, I could pull out 2 minutes another hair, and it'll be mitzaref. But according to what we said, it'll come out very well. Because over there by karcha, one could say it's not called chalitz tufi. It's true. I pull out a second hair, it'll be mitzaref. But the other pshat is that kol man, I pull out one hair, that's not called a karcha. It's not called I made a karcha. It's not called a bald spot. One is not called a bald spot. If I pull out another hair, then I'm afraid it'll become a korcha. That's not called Yitzufi. By Achila, by Shua, half a shear is also called Achila. It's also called Achila. It's just not enough to be chayiv. Because I had in mind only to answer full Gezayis. But it's called Achila. So then this very Shem Achila is called Yitzufi. But by korcha, pulling out one is not it's chativ lacha. Doesn't have a shemais of kricha being kaireach. It's not a bald spot. It's not called one out. One here is not called a korcha. Not called kricha. That's and if I do another here, then I'm afraid it'll get a shem korcha. That's not called these two. There's much more to talk about this Indian, but the time is up. I just want to say one short. I see I have another 3 minutes, so I want to say one. The Olam is learning in Yom of Shabbos. So I want to say one chiddush that's very negel ma'isa. That's as follows. This chiddush Reb Elia Lapian, it's brought down in the sefer about Reb Elia, and he brings the following. He was once, I think, for Shabbos. He once visited the Chafetz Chaim, and the Chafetz Chaim told him a murder chiddush. Chafetz Chaim told him, we know Chazal tell us that Shkula Shabbos is Shkula Kineged Kol HaTorah Kula. In other words, what that means is that the person observes Shabbos, so it's shove to observing Kol HaTorah Kula. It's equal to Tayag mitzvahs. But Chafetz Chaim told him it means much more than that. It means that any mitzvah that a person does on Shabbos it's equal to Tayag mitzvahs. Any mitzvah a person does on Shabbos is Shkula Tayag mitzvahs. And then he said like this. Then he said, the Chafetz Chaim said this. Chafetz Chaim said, it's Yidua that the Goin says that when it comes to Limud HaTorah, every word that a person learns is a kiyum mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Every word is noch a kiyum. Chafetz Chaim said that means every word that a person learns on Shabbos is equal to Tayag mitzvahs. And he made a cheshbon. The Chafetz Chaim made a cheshbon. In 1 minute you could say 150 words, 200 words, whatever. So multiply that 150 times Tayag, and multiply that. If you learn for an hour on Shabbos, multiply that by 60. He said it runs into the millions. And a person learns a couple hours on Shabbos, it's mamish billions. He says, that's what Chafetz Chaim told him. And from that time on, Reb Eli Lapshan was so makbid on Shabbos, every minute of learning. It's such a worthwhile investment. Learning Torah on Shabbos, it's worth Tayag. That's what Chafetz Chaim told him. Now, you have to know where the Chafetz Chaim gets it from. What is the makkah to say this? This is a murdig chiddush. A murdig chiddush that any mitzvah you do on Shabbos is any mitzvah you do on Shabbos is shakel like Tayag mitzvahs. I mean, Chazal say Shabbos is shakel kol HaTorah kula. Shabbos, shuta, that means Shmira Shabbos is like call mitzvahs kulam. But where the Chafetz Chaim gets this chiddush that any mitzvah you do on Shabbos is shakel Tayag. So I think there's the Gemara in Zvachim. We know that the rule of Todi Yeshayna Todi Kodim. You have two mitzvahs to do, and one is more Todi, one comes more often. Todi comes first. So last a person ate. He ate the food, and he has to make a bracha achrayna. But then he goes out to the washroom before he makes bracha achrayna. So now he has two brachas to make, sheyatza and bracha achrayna. So which one does he make first? So Mishmur says you make a sheyatza first, because sheyatza is more Todi. The person makes sheyatza more times per day than burning flushes. So that's the rule of Todi Shein Todi Kodim. So more in Zvachim, Perikol Todi has a shayla. Let's say one mitzvah is Todi, and the other mitzvah is not Todi, but it's more Mekudish. The other mitzvah is more Mekudish. Which one comes first? See, one wants to bring a raya. Because we see Friday night, we make Kiddush, we make two brachas, a gofen, and then we make a shekidishanu, the bracha of Kiddush. We make a gofen first. Why do we make a gofen first? So one of the reasons given is because it's Tadi. Gofen you make more often than the bracha of Kiddush. Tadi shein Tadi kaidim. But the Gemara says the bracha of Kiddush is in the Kuddush. That's a Shabbatic mitzvah. It's more of a Kuddush. So the Chayra, you have a right from here that Tadi comes even before another mitzvah that's more of a Kuddush. The Gemara slugs up the right. One says no, because you think the Gemara. You think that when you make a gofen on Shabbos, it's the same as making a gofen during the week? No. You make a gofen on Shabbos, it's any mitzvah you do on Shabbos, the Gemara says, because the Kuddush, B'Kedusha Shabbos. In other words, a gofen you make on Shabbos is also a Kuddush. No less than the Kiddush that you make on Shabbos. Even though the gofen you make is ordinary Birchas Ananin. But when you make it on Shabbos, it becomes Mekudish. It's Mekudish. Sustaining Wartaka that a mitzvah that's done on Shabbos, is because of Mekudish, B'Kedusha Shabbos. So you see, so maybe that's what Chafetz Chaim held. If Shabbos is shakel, so any mitzvah you do on Shabbos, is Mekudish, B'Kedusha Shabbos, and it's worth Tayak. But I think it's even more than that, because in Parshas Eschanan, the pasuk in the Seres of Dibros, It says over there, Shomas Yom Shabbos the Kadashoi, Kasher Tzivcha Hashem Elokecha. Keep Shabbos, observe Shabbos, the way Hashem commanded you. What do they mean, way He commanded you? So Rashi says, it means way He commanded you in Morah, because Shabbos is one of the mitzvahs they were already commanded in Morah. And if I state in his Parna also, that it means Kasher Tzivcha, like He commanded you in Morah. But what's the Torah adding by saying Kasher Tzivcha? What's the Torah adding? Why necessary for the Torah to say, keep Shabbos the way I commanded you in Morah? What did He command us in Morah more than at Sinai? So Dr. Separno Murray the Gezach, because in Morah, I'll read you the words of the Separno, few lines. When He commanded you there to do Shabbos, there it says, because there the pasuk says, Shom sam loy choyke mishpat v'shom niso, and Chazal say choyke mishpat refers to Shabbos. Then the following pasuk it says, v'yoyme mishmoya tishma l'koil Hashem akecha v'yosh bein v'tasa v'yazatel mitzvayso v'shmata v'chukav. So it's important to learn that pasuk is referring to Shabbos. That pasuk is telling us, Hoidiyam shelo yaspik loy shetekachsheyu b'mesh tishma b'ay. It's not maspik on Shabbos just to rest and not violate the lamites malachas. But I will shetasik boy b'Torah mitzvahs ka'amroi v'yoshe beinov tasei v'azatel mitzvahs. The Torah is telling us that it's on Shabbos. It's not enough just to keep Shabbos. It's not enough just to keep Shabbos to keep the lamites malachas. On Shabbos there's a b'zundra chiyuv shetasik boy b'Torah mitzvahs. Murder gezach. Kumta is that to do mitzvahs on Shabbos, there's two mechayvim. There's the general chiyuv. You do Torah mitzvahs all week long. But here the Torah is saying, do it the way I commanded you in Morah. In Morah, He said that on Shabbos, he learns that's referring to Shabbos. That on Shabbos there's a b'zundr mechayiv mitzat Shabbos to keep Torah mitzvahs. Kumtais b'furish filas b'furish in the Torah that any mitzvah you do on Shabbos has a b'zundr mechayiv mitzat Shabbos. Then it's possible why any mitzvah you do is shava like taig mitzvahs. Rav Aaron Leib Steinman Zitzal said he has a starke kasha on this chiddush of the Chofetz Chaim. He has a starke kasha. We end with this. His kasha is like this. It says in Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah says that a Talmud Chacham who all week long spends full time learning, a kol young man learns all week long, learns 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. He learns. So when Shabbos comes, he has the right to spend more time with Oynik Shabbos, resting and Oynik Shabbos. But somebody, a balabas, who all week long doesn't learn as much because he's busy, he's working, busy. So he learns. He learns every day, but doesn't learn so much. So he should spend more time on Shabbos. He should spend more time learning on Shabbos. So look at our labor. It's coming very modern zach. Let's say a balabas, based on this Shema, we'll learn on Shabbos 1 hour more than a Talmud Chacham learns. That 1 hour of learning on Shabbos, every second is worth Tayag. He's going to end up with his hour is worth 630 times as much every second as the learning of that's done during the week. Come out that this balabas who's during the week, he has a quiz, he learns every day an hour, let's say. But on Shabbos, he learns 1 hour more than the Talmud Chacham. Let's say in the Ramah, balabas who works all week long should spend more time learning than a Talmud Chacham. So it's going to come out in Cheshbon. He's going to come out with. He's going to come way ahead because he has an extra hour of learning on Shabbos, which is worth 630 every second. It's millions and millions. He'll come out way ahead of this Talmud Chacham who learns all week long, 10, 12 hours a day. But Shabbos, he learns 1 hour less. He follows the Ramah. So it's a Pella. How can that be? So they figure out next time. So I want to say like this. I want to say that there's many rights. We're not going to be married now, but what's like a pshat that a Talmud Chacham, who learns all week long, he can spend more time on Shabbos. What? He gets a freebie. He gets a free ride. The Miri said the pshat is because he needs it. He has to relax his mind. He needs a little bit. He needs at least 1 day to sleep a little bit more, eat a little bit more better. It's not stomach. He learns all week, so he can waste some time on Shabbos. No. It's all the Torah learning. If he doesn't the Torah learning, it's like learning. He will get schad many rights for this, that if a person does the tzarech learning, it's like learning. He'll get the tayak for resting for einig if he's doing it to be able to rest up, to be able to learn better during the week. That's good for learning. The Meister, the Rav in Germany, Dovid Hoffman, one of the Gedolei Rabbanim in Germany, and he instructed his Rebbe's in the following. He said, sometimes during the week he has to take a little nap. Yeah, normal. Always much it. Sometimes he doesn't get too much sleep at night. He has to take a little bit of nap. So somebody comes to the door. A boss comes and has a shayla. So she told his Rebbe, and she shouldn't say that the Rav is not available now because he's taking a nap. Can't say that to a boss. But a Rav is not allowed to nap, not allowed to sleep. He said she should tell the boss the Rav is busy now preparing a shir. That's what he said, and it's not sheker because that's what he's doing. He's napping, able to rest his mind. So she shouldn't say that he's napping. She should say the Rav is not available right now. He's busy preparing a shir. When a person naps, or whatever he does, with tzarech learning, it's like learning. He'll get schar for that as if he's learning. So he's not losing out. That hour that he may be spending more time resting or on Shabbos, to be able to learn better during the week, that's like learning. He'll get the tayak it's not as if he's learning. So he's not losing out anything. If it's yourself, we should not be zeicha to be able to go and Torah Baruch Hashem, a group of Batim who are Kaveya, hours every day to learn Torah, to go out to Geschus. That's Chus, we should be zeicha to see how Romans carrying a Torah v'yas Gal Tzedek B'meir.